I don't get it. It used to be that baby boomer was just a term to identify people that were born post World War II. Now the term baby boomer seems to be a pejorative. Why is that? Well, I gave it a fair amount of thought, and what I came up with even surprised me a little bit. I was ready to make a video about all the reasons people don't like baby boomers and all the reasons baby boomers don't like Gen Z or Gen X, and I really came to a totally different conclusion. The fact is, baby boomers don't all hate Gen X or Gen Z or millennials or anything else, and they don't all think of them in a stereotypical way. But that's the problem. It's a stereotype. It's a stereotype for baby boomers. It's a stereotype for millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, whatever order they come in. I don't even know. It doesn't matter to me. But being a society now that's enthralled with sound bites, memes, headlines, just this much of the picture, less even, this much of the picture. We've all become, how do you put it? How would I put it? How would I put it? We've gotten to the point where we look at the headline and move on to the next headline. We look at a meme, a 2-sentence or a 1-sentence or a couple of words meme, and move on to the next meme. Instead of thinking about it, giving it any thought at all. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just the way it is. But I think that's the problem with the baby boomer Gen whatever issue. I think it's all based on stereotypes. And I used to say, well, stereotypes come from somewhere. And that's true. The stereotypes do come from somewhere, but they don't come from the majority. They come from the minority. They come from what stands out the most. When somebody walks into a room, people will ask you, well, what's the first thing you notice? Well, what you notice is the thing that's most noticeable. If a 500-pound person walks into a room, you notice their size. That's just the way it is. But with the baby boomer, Gen X, Gen Z, millennial, whatever other ones there are, it's based on a small percentage, a small group within that group. It's not the norm. All baby boomers don't wear socks with their sandals, and not all Gen whatevers don't know how to drive a stick shift, which happen to be a couple of the most popular stereotypes in the groups. So we're basing our thoughts and our conversations on this small group within each group. How fair is that? Not fair at all. But that's what gets the attention. I think it's kind of funny, actually. As a boomer, I have to remind myself that the picture that comes across my Facebook feed or YouTube feed or whatever of the person in clown makeup with chartreuse hair and that's not the norm for that generation. That's the exception in that generation. But that's what you see all the time because that's what's pushed in front of you. That's what gets the attention, which is why they do it, of course. But just the same, they don't represent their generation any more than the guy in the socks and sandals represents boomers. It's funny to me. I don't know. Well, most of the time it's funny to me. Sometimes it's not funny to me. It can get really snarky and really negative, and that I'm not too fond of that, but that happens too. It's no secret that here in the United States we've become a pretty divided country. Everybody has to have their own group to belong to, and they're in opposition to other groups. The generation thing, the baby boomer versus whatnot, is just one example of that. The curious part to me is why we have to look for why it's human nature, it seems to be human nature, to look for the differences in groups rather than similarities. I'll be doing another video down the line here about tribalism and clan nature, but that's a whole nother video. But my question is, why are we looking at the differences and not the similarities? Why don't we look for things that we can agree on rather than things that we disagree on? Or why are we picky about a different group because they have different ideas or different habits or different personalities? In thinking more about this topic, I've kind of made a decision for myself that I'm going to try and stop commenting on the stereotypical behavior and habits of any particular group. I want to make a concentrated effort to do that. I throw out a joke from time to time, like a lot of people. Not that I necessarily mean it to be snarky or nasty or that, but I do that. And I'm going to try to cut back on that a little bit. You know, as much I don't like hearing some of the boomer stuff that's out there. So, and I'm sure the millennials or the other gens don't like it either. And when you hear some of the negative remarks about boomers, for instance, a lot of time it's in response to something that a boomer has said or done that's been negative. So kind of keep that in mind. If you say something about a Gen Xer not being able to drive a stick shift, expect a negative comment in return. That's only fair, right? I think we can all use a little more tolerance with others, not just the generations, but the races and nationalities, religions, everything. A little more tolerance would probably go a long way. I'm going to try that. I have to remember that my thoughts and my ideas are based on my 75 years of experience. You know, all the things that I've been through in the times, in the age, in the circumstance of the last 75 years. Somebody younger than me is basing their ideas and their positions and whatnot on their 30 years or 35 years or 40 years. And on that time, without the previous time being part of their experience. If you think about that for a minute, it was the same with our parents. When we were growing up, we had ideas and whatnot different than our parents, because their experience was from 30 years that we didn't have at the time. So we can't expect the people with 20 or 30 years of experience to have the same views and everything of those of us that have 70 years of experience. That's not reasonable. It would be nice if the younger generations listened to the older generations a little bit more without just blowing them off entirely. But we did the same thing with our older generations. If you grew up in the 60s and 70s, you experienced some of that, I'm sure. So maybe the bottom line is just to sit down, relax, calm down, and try and be more tolerant of each other. Peace, joy, and stay off my lawn.